It is a huge honor for me to be interviewing a dental consultant in my backyard. I've known Sara for years. She has a stellar reputation, and thank you so much for coming by the house. It's always better to do it live than via Skype. But how are you doing, Sara?
I'm excellent. How about yourself?
I am doing damn good. It's so fun when you get to work out of your house and have your own son. I feel the luckiest dad in the world because all four of my boys had moved out, gone to college, moved on. And then one by one, three have moved back in. So I know this is a rare golden chapter in my life, and it could be gone tomorrow. So I want to ask you, you've been consulting for years. You've seen, there's 3,800 dentists in the Valley, and you're in like one of the 10th largest cities in Arizona. I mean, in the United States. And what I wanted to ask you is, what I think the biggest advantage of consultants is a dentist only sees their own office. Mm-hmm. And that's all they see. So they may think they're doing good when they're doing bad. A lot of dentists, especially the super achievers, think they're doing bad when they're doing really good. Like I have dentists all the time doing $600, $800, $1 million. I think they're doing so bad. I'm like, dude, the average doesn't even do 500. I had a dentist the other day. I thought he was going to cry. And he was doing $1.5 million. I'm like, dude, you're doing 3 dental offices in one. So I think a lot of dentists don't have any grasp of comparing their offices. So you've been doing this for years. So I just want to get cut right to the chase. What do you think separates a dentist that's happy and healthy and successful, whatever that may mean to him, versus the ones that are not happy, not successful, whatever that means? And what are best practices that you see? That you're talking to thousands of dentists out there. I'm not sure you're talking to any consultants or office managers. Everybody that sends me an email is always a dentist.
Okay.
So tell the dentists what do you think they should think about?
Well, the biggest thing why I think people hire me, Howard, is really for balance. They don't always know that yet. When I first go in there, one of the things you always talk about, what's the question that keeps you awake at night, right? And I ask the exact same thing. What is it that keeps you awake at night? And usually it's some version of they don't have enough time, they don't have enough money, they don't have enough balance. So how do you work that out so that they can have the freedom? Why you went to dental school so that you didn't have to work. Well, you're the exception. You work 1 million hours a week, right? So that they don't have to do that. And I think that's one of the most common complaints I hear. It doesn't matter if I'm in Canada, London, anywhere in the US. They want to know how to balance everything and be a good, effective leader. That's the portion that's always missing. Like they always have somebody in their office that maybe you dentists out there listening today don't have this equation, but there's this great girl that works up front or somebody awesome in the back, but there's this one thing that I need to speak to them about, right? And they're afraid to do so for whatever reason. Good help is hard to find. I hear that a lot, right? But how do you have those uncomfortable conversations? So one of the things that I get to do if I'm hired into a practice is really look at, can I help facilitate those conversations and hopefully train the dentist and the office manager so when I'm no longer there, they have the technique for having those kind of conversations and not letting it fester.
I see it with all humans, and I think all humans call it gossip when it's really not gossip. No. They're venting.
Yes.
And they're venting exactly negatively because if I complain to you about Frank,
yes,
I feel better. So now the problem's worse because now I'm less likely to go back to Frank. So if you're a social animal and we all have to work together to get along, having an uncomfortable conversation is against our hardwiring biology.
Yes.
And the success is measured by how many uncomfortable conversations you're willing to have.
Yeah, and that brings up a lot of points. So one of the things I do is facilitate those conversations, and sometimes I have to have them for the dentist or the office. So, the consultant has a bad rap that you're going to come in, you're going to hire, fire, and then leave a notebook and then go away, right? So I love saying I have this coaching component to me where I'm on the court with them. I understand dentistry. I started as a hygiene assistant. I was a dental assistant. I worked up front. I know what it feels like to fill slots, right? Those big open holes on the schedule. And if there were those, I was not allowed to go home at night without filling my hygiene schedule. It was one of the greatest gifts I ever learned was how to fill a hygiene schedule. That's one of the things I train people on that they still come back to me all these years later and like, thank you for teaching me that, right? So what was my point?
Well, the coaching aspect of it.
The coaching aspect, thank you. So it's really teaching them how to have those crucial conversations so that they have the freedom and they have the balance and they don't have the front hating the back and the back hating the front or being resentful for somebody. But one of the things I've noticed is I have to sometimes have those crucial conversations with the doctors themselves. Like, listen, I see that you call in sick at least one time a week. So you're really only working 3 days a week, not 4 days a week. Let's deal with the facts here. It's not emotional. It's not a personal attack, but how do you have it in a way that they feel left empowered as well? And sometimes the dentist is the problem as well. It could be that they're calling in sick. They've lost their passion and drive for dentistry. So how do you re-motivate them? And it's really getting everyone involved. I was listening to one of your podcasts recently about, letting your team know what the bare butt minimum is or a bare bones minimum or, your nut you have to crack. It's really important because most teams don't understand what that is. And then they're like, why is my dentist such a pain in the butt? And why is he watching every pair of gloves I take off and throw into the trash can and picking them out and counting? And, this and that and the other, but they don't really understand how much money it takes to run the business. So when I can coach the dentist to be an effective leader, it trickles down into the practice. And who doesn't want to be led by an effective leader?
I think that's interesting when you're talking about balance, and then these doctors calling in sick. There's a lot of data that shows that when a doctor goes in and works like 3 9-hour days, they'll produce more than any dentist who's working 5.5 days a week. And that it's kind of like the difference between a 5K and a marathon. When you're just going to go in there and you're only going to do a 5K, you'll run as hard as you can.
Yes.
But if you got to go Monday through Friday and a half day on Saturday, you just go so slow. You pace yourself. And when dentists work more hours, like 5 days a week, they work Monday, Friday at 5. They do far more watches. Like they'll go in there and there'll be a black sticky and I'll just watch it. Emergencies, instead of starting the root canal, they'll give them Pen VK and Vicodin. They'll call in sick.
Yep.
Those are red flags. I mean, calling in sick, doing watches, treating an infection and that nobody in the planet knows how to treat a tooth infection other than endo or an extraction. But when doc's treating it with a script of antibiotics and Vicodin, they're burned out, they're fried. There's something else going on.
Yeah. And
so this balance you're talking about is everything.
It's huge because it really allows them to do what they say they want to do. Here's the thing. If you're an effective leader, meaning a boss to many people are counting on your livelihood, right? As a dentist, you own a dental practice. If you're not there, the automatic thing, or if you have a limp or a bad back or a bad arm, the whole team, you can almost see it if you really pay attention to it. They get nervous, right? Because they're like, uh-oh, my doctor, my leader, the dentist is not as well as he could be. Now what? What's going to happen to my livelihood, right? If I'm the dental assistant or the hygienist, if he's not here, it's an awesome responsibility and somewhat of a burden, right? That you're responsible for lots of people's livelihoods. You have a lot of people on your team that have been there for ages and they know that they can count on you and their checks aren't going to bounce. And even if you're not there, you're going to be accountable and responsible and have somebody else do your job. So they get nervous and they tell me these things behind closed doors. They're like, uh-oh, he's calling in sick, or, oh my gosh, he has a backache, or, I notice he's not going to his therapy sessions for his arm, back, whatever it might be, right? And that's just a reality in dentistry. You're hunched over a lot.
Well, there was a huge study. It was done with 1 million chiropractic big 2-foot by 2-foot x-rays lower back, and I think it was like the National Institute of Research or the NIDA or some big national deal. This came out about 5 years ago. That basically they proved with this study that all lower back pain was psychosomatic, and that when you're stressed, you have migraines, yes, TMJ, irritable bowel, lower back, and heart arrhythmias and issues. And when you go around every country, this country says, oh, I get my migraine from gluten, or this one, I forgot my, they have all these little tribal voodoo things. But when you look at the data across countries, it's like, no, it's probably a stress reaction. Yeah. So when doctor's lower back is going out and he has to call in sick and all that, it's stress. So I'll get to this. So what are the things you think that stresses out a doctor to where they have to call in sick, they get lower back pain, they get migraines or
Well, I think there's
irritable
some
bowel.
reality on it, right? There's some physicalities that just happen, but then also the stress of managing their team. There's usually
People.
is a big component, right? Anytime you have stress or you resist something, whatever you resist persists. Have you ever noticed that? Like,
I like that. I'm going to write that down. Whatever you resist, persists.
So it just continues to percolate. Have you ever noticed if you have a backache or a toothache or anything like that, and the more you're like touching it and feeling it and rubbing it and all of that and not dealing with it, it just continues to persist. So dentists, in my opinion, I love them. I love dentistry. I've been doing this for many, many years. Thank goodness. And one of the things they don't like to do is be confrontational, whether that's even just dealing with their wallet or their budget or their team. And it's not right or wrong. They keep resisting it and they're not dealing with it. And then that coincides with a backache. They say backache, what I've learned about that too, lower back is all about money. So if you're stressed out about money or you're concerned about it, your lower back will hurt. I don't know if there's truth to that or not, but
Well, I mean, the three divorce issues. I mean, a third money, a third over sex, and a third over substance abuse.
Yes.
And I think the substance abuse is self-treating
Yes.
for the stress over money.
Yes.
And the stress over sex goes back to they're afraid to have an uncomfortable conversation.
yeah.
People, and the same thing with money. A successful dentist feels like a loser to go home and tell his or her spouse, I know I'm a successful cosmetic dentist in Manhattan, but I don't have that much money.
Yeah, right.
Why?
Correct.
And it lowers their ego to sit there. And I mean, who wants to go home and tell your spouse you got to be on a budget?
Mm-hmm.
That's an uncomfortable conversation that you have to have with your spouse, your kids. So you're big into monitoring and measuring.
Yes.
And before we go into monitoring and measuring, I've always thought the best consultants, at the end of the day, they're all armchair consultants. They're all Dr. Phil's. I mean, when someone says to me, I paid this consultant $50,000 and I loved it, and in fact I had her back 5 years later, and this and that and this, and when I start saying, well, what did it do? They almost never ever talk about production, collection, money. They always talk about they're happier and healthier, and their game came together. And then you look at these Olympic coaches. Well, if some little girl's been doing gymnastics from 5 years old to 20, I mean, you're not really out there coaching her on how to do a backflip. You're basically trying to keep her head on task. She's burned out, she's fried, she's got injuries, she's not happy, and the Olympics is still 12 months away. I mean, in fact, I always thought if you were ever going to go to school to be a dental consultant, you should be Dr. Phil first. So the reason I set you up for that is, you're going to go into what you should monitor and measure and all that stuff. But my problem that I see is that humans don't like to be transparent. They don't like to show their staff their numbers, and they just everything's a secret in their closet. And then I can go like I have lunch this week with two different dentists. And when I go in there, I always ask the same routine questions to the staff. No one knows their break-even point for the day. No one knows their bare ass minimum. No one knows at what time of the day do they enter the profit zone. No one. I mean, I could ask them. By the way, are your supplies 4% or 8%? Even the girl ordering them doesn't know.
I know, it's scary.
I mean, so when you're talking about all this measuring, I want you to first back up and put on your Dr. Phil hat and say,
excellent.
Why does a talking monkey not want to show his report card and get all the staff on the same team so that the work just goes away? I mean, once you're transparent with the numbers and I say, okay, you're in charge of supplies should be 6%. And if it's 7%, that's cool. Next month I want it 5%. But at the end of the year, if it's not 6%, then you and your little supply lady friend are both fired. And that's what I tell Val.
Yep.
That's what I tell Jan. I said, if you can't do it, you got the whole year. But if you can't do it, then I'm going to let someone else try it for next year. Mm-hmm. So here's the number. And so those two work on it. But Val's very incentivized because she don't want to lose the account. I mean, today's dental orders a lot of supplies, and then the problem with the assistants like Jan is every time you go to a convention, you want to come home and buy every new toy known to man.
Yeah.
But then she's sitting there thinking, but he did say six. I mean, he did get. And I tell Jan, I said she's been with me 20 years. I said, when you go to a convention, you get crazy. Kind of like when you go on a cruise. You go to Jamaica and you see all this weird, neat shit, so you buy it all. And then you get home, you're trying to like, well, where should this go? And it's like probably back to Jamaica,
Right.
So how do you get How do you get a dentist to be transparent?
It's awesome. I'm so glad you asked me this question. I just had this conversation. One of my best friends is in dentistry as well, and we're weird. We go to coffee and talk about dentistry instead of, other things. But she was telling me she just saw a study recently that said 70% of Fortune 500 companies hire a coach or have a mentorship program in it because they understand the value of mentoring your people, that they're more productive when they're at work and not working more. Because who wants to ever sign up for working more? No one, when I go to a dental office, says, Sarah, I want to work more and get paid less. Ever. They never tell me that. They want to work less and get paid more, right? So what's the difference between therapy, consulting, and coaching? And there was a great breakdown on it. And I'm like, wow, this is really great. When you go to a consultant, you're asking for an expert opinion. What should my number be? As a consultant, I can tell you that. But if I don't get to the philosophy that's going on in between these two ears on a dentist, the leader or the owner, it doesn't matter. I could give them all the best tools in the world and none of this stuff's going to matter. They're not going to implement it, right? So I always start with, where do you want to be next year at this time? Where do you want to be? December 31st, 2016, we're standing on the finish line. Where do we want to be? And I have to get what their goal is. Otherwise, I'm never going to get them there. I can give them all the tools in the world. I can train their team up. And what's predictable and likely is the minute I walk out and I'm not keeping them account, no one's going to keep. Like what you just said about your two people on your team is awesome because most doctors don't know those numbers or they won't hold them to account. Like they want to be nice, like nice, and meanwhile, there's a fire going on and our house is burning down and your spouse is cheating with your best friend and no one's talking about it, right? That's that transparency you're talking about, correct? So you're right. You have to get into the coaching realm, and there's a fine line between coaching, therapy, and consulting. I don't want to be a therapist. I don't want to be Dr. Phil.
How's that working for you?
Yeah, that question. I'm like, how's that working for you? Well, they wouldn't hire me if it was working, right? Yeah. And I want to go in and be able to coach them up. Even the best practices I've ever worked with, no matter what, always have some fine tweaking, and it's usually in the leadership portion of it. It's not the numbers. Of course, those things help, right? We have to have systems in place, no doubt about it. Dr. Mark Costas, am I saying his name right? He's a big fan of operation manuals. I used to always call them the how-to manual or the Bible in the office. You have to have the rules put in place so that there's always exceptions to the rules. However, usually there's an exception, but you got to have the rules in place so your team knows what it is. It's no different than your kids. You're talking about your 4 great boys. When they were 10 and 15 and 18, you didn't say, well, go out and come back whenever you want. Hopefully you didn't. You're like, your curfew's XYZ, and when you break it, there's a consequence. And for some reason, we don't want to do that in our dental practices. We just want to kind of like hope and pray that it all turns out, right? And all that's based in fear. So when you're going back to saying the coaching aspect of it, fear, that's what's driving all of it. Fear that if I tell everyone my numbers, what if they go out and get drunk tonight at the bowling alley in a small town and tell everyone what my numbers are? Well, it's neither here nor there. Who even really knows how to break those numbers down, right? Anyone else? I was in a practice recently in Scottsdale, and we had a big team meeting, and we always do them off-site. We go off-site so that it feels like a CE course, and we're learning, and the doctors are paying their team, and they're paying me. I want them to get their biggest bang for their buck. And I said, hey, team, and I'm looking at them, what do you think it costs to run a dental office? And a lot of them had been there 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. They had no idea. They're like, 30,000 a month, 30,000 a week. They really didn't know. And I turned to the doctors. I'm like, is it fine if I share with your team what it costs? And they said, yeah. And it was 115,000 a month. That was their nut they had to crack. The team was floored. And all of a sudden this revelation, and they were like coming up to the doctors afterwards and hugging them and thanking me for just allowing them to know what that number was, because now it made more sense to them. We'll use a football analogy. You and I go to a football game tonight, and we're not really watching the game. We're just kind of hanging out, chit-chatting, and then you go home, and Ryan says to you, hey, Dad, who won the game? You're like, I don't know. Who, scored the winning touchdown, or who kicked in the field goal? And you're like, I don't know. That's how it is in some dental practices if we're not sharing those numbers with them, right? We're just running really fast on the treadmill and we have no idea. That's why, going back to, things to measure, that's why we do a morning huddle. Why wouldn't you do a morning huddle? It's ridiculous. Like, why wouldn't you want to start your day? Like, hey, how did we do yesterday? How's it looking for today? And how are we looking for tomorrow? If we're not talking about it, we're not having the communication, and we're not sharing with our team, we're just doing okay work. And they can be the best dentist out there.
Two big fears I hear as well, I don't want the staff learning how much money I can make. It's like, dude, there's 56 dental schools. If they look at your number and say, damn, I want to be like Dr. Sara, I'm going to dental school. Awesome. I've had 2 assistants go to dental school, Elena and in Florida, and Kelly Bradley in Bullhead City. I mean, go for it. Yeah. I was like, and you know why both those assistants I told them they had to go to dental school. They're the only 2 assistants in my life where whenever they were assisting you, and I have a bald head, I don't have any cushion. They kept always bumping their head. They were like bulldogging their head. It's like,
to get in there,
I gotta see, and they're like knocking my head over, and I just saw the passion, and they always begged to do all the expanded functions, and so we broke every law known to man. Like, yeah, go it, knock yourself out. And but the other one is that they don't want their staff to know. I mean, they're in a small town. They don't want their And it's funny how exactly wrong that is. I mean, I'll never forget, I met an Iranian cardiovascular surgeon in Wichita, Kansas, where I was born and raised. And he came in there and he said, everybody else was a legend. They were all from Kansas. He was an outsider. He's an Iranian coming into this farm town. So you know what he did?
What?
He went out and bought himself like $180,000 red Ferrari Lamborghini. I forgot. I think it was Ferrari or Lamborghini. I forgot what it was.
Really stick out.
And put Heart Doctor on the back. Well, ask anybody in Kansas, who do you want to do your bypass? The guy driving the Chevy truck, or the guy driving the only $100,000 red sports car? Now, he told me that was the single biggest. I think his name was Dr. Farran. He said that was the single biggest market. He said he never had to market because everybody wanted the Heart Doctor that's so successful that he owns a red Ferrari or Lamborghini or whatever the hell it was.
Isn't that great?
And so I mean, who cares if your staff knows you? Because that's what I think it comes down to. I think it comes down to if the staff finds out you make a bunch of money, that there's something wrong with that. Well, they all want to work for a successful business. Nobody wants to work for a dying dental office, and nobody wants to have their body fixed by someone who's so unsuccessful at it, they're about to lose their business and they have to drive a Dodge Dart to work every day.
Right. It's the perfect analogy is a sports. Who wants to be on a losing team? No one does, right? You want to have a door that everyone's knocking on it because they want to work for you because you're the best dentist around and you treat your team well. So one of the things I learned many years ago from a consultant I worked with was, and I'm stealing this from him and I'll give him props, and it's Gary Cady, that he really coined the term triple win, not just a win-win, but the triple win. And what that meant is, how do you have the business win, the patients win, and the team win? And for me, I'm a visual learner, so I always envision it as a 3-legged stool. If one of those 3 legs were off, you wouldn't want to sit on it, and you sure in the heck aren't going to jump on it or stand on it. So how do you ensure that the team wins, the practice win, the patients win? And when you make every decision as a leader based on that triple win, you're not going to lose. It doesn't matter whether it's rolling out bonus structures. It's, you got to look at from your business too. Are you about price, quality, or service? You can't be all 3. You know this. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, and I teach my offices that, like, which one are you? Which 2 are you? Are you price, quality, or service? That goes along with that triple win, right? You can't be everything to everyone. And when you really hone in on those 2, that's your leadership portion. And now you're sharing that with your team. Now you're sharing your bare butt minimum with them. You're sharing them the number that you want. It's just a number that we pick, right, based on where they want to end up at the end of the year. I'm working with a practice right now with 2 doctors, and they want to do $2.1 million next year. Why? Why not? That's the number they want. And so we break it down for them. How many days do you have to work per year? How many, like all of that, so that they can have the results turn out. But if you're not sharing that with your team has no idea what your goal is, and they're just coming in and working. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you want to be world-class customer service, you want to go to the Super Bowl or the World Series, you got to have a game plan. And that's really what I do. is
The
create
dentist,
game plan.
the dentist can't even do that simple. I mean, just that simple deal. You can't be, if you want to be all things, to all people. I don't know the secret to success, but I know the secret to failure is to be all things to all people. And they can't do it. They'll sign up on these PPO fee schedules, and you'll say, okay, well, on that fee schedule, you got to place amalgams and use a low cost lab like Glidewell. Oh no. I'm doing direct composites, and I'm using the lab up the street that's $140 a unit.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay. And then they'll sign up for all these PPOs and go out and buy a $75,000 BioLace, $150,000 CAD CAM, $100,000 CBCT. And you're like, so basically you're getting paid for a Chevy and you want to build a Mercedes Benz.
Yes.
To a patient that just coming in there just because you're PPO, they already came to you on price. And they ordered a hamburger. And when you serve them a Ruth Chris steak, they don't even say thank you. I've never, ever had a patient say, same thing with the fee schedule. You'll go into a medical dental building right here in this zip code.
Okay.
Right here in Ahwatukee, Chandler, Mesa. And there'll be 8 dentists in the building, and they're all charging $1,000 for a molar root canal. And there'll be an endodontist next door charging $1,500. And if I say to you, you're a woman, so I'll ask you, how much is prostate surgery?
No idea.
Yeah, because you don't have a prostate, and you probably are never going to be told a financial arrangement on a prostate. So you go into the 8 dental office, and not one person's ever had a molar root canal that checks out and says, "Oh my God, it was only $1,000." Wow, that's low cost. Thank you so much. Then you go into the so they all say, "Wow, that's expensive." They go to the endodontist, $1,500. Wow, that's expensive. The endodontist has 40% overhead. The general dentists all have 65% overhead, yes. And nobody thanks the dentist for being lower price. And they sign up for these PPOs, and they still give them, direct heliomolar, tetric flow, high cost composites with, rubber dam, average barrel of bonding agent. A barrel of oil is $100. Well, it was a year ago. Now it's about half that. A barrel of bonding agent is $1.5 million. And you say, well, let's not buy a barrel of bonding agent and let's place some amalgams in the back, at least on boys. Nope, not going to do it. Well, let's use a low-cost lab like Glidewell. Let's get an oral scanner, and they'll give you a $20 discount on your crown. No, not going to do it. And then they'll come back to you and say, well, why is my overhead so high? It's like, because you're trying to be all things to all people.
Yeah. That's a great thing. If one of the very first offsite team meetings I do, hopefully in the first 30 days when I'm hired with a client, is we want the whole team to have the same methodology. That's the other part, right? It makes no sense to them if you and you're the dentist and I'm a dentist too, and we own it together, but we're not sharing that information with our team. They need to know where we stand. Are we price driven? Are we quality driven? Are we service driven? And then you can only be 2 of those 3 and do it really well. And I always give them the analogy of going to Costco, right? We go to Costco to save money on our toilet paper and paper towel, and we buy it in bulk, and there's no one in the aisles helping us. No one's going to help us push it out or load all that stuff into our car. And then we go to Starbucks and we drive through the drive-through and spend $5 on a cup of coffee, right? So you got to look at, and there's nothing wrong with any of those models, but they're not trying to be everything to everyone. You don't go to Costco for the service. Now, they're good when you return things, right? But you're going there for price and quality, right? That's my take on it. But when you're going to Starbucks, you're not going there for price. They're all quality and service, right? They know your name. They write your name in the cup. They put a little smiley on there. It's so overpriced, but we still do it. And you're exactly head on in the dental offices, and I let the teams decide that, because if I go in there and try to be a dictator to them and be a consultant and be like, you're going to be this, it's not going to work out. I'm like, how many of you like to be told what to do? Same thing in me. And they're like, some will. 50% of the room will say, I like being told what to do. Okay, so where do you want to be? Do you want to be price, quality, or service driven? And then you got to pick those 2, and then that's where we're going to stand for the whole year. So going back to what you were saying, a few minutes ago, how do you start off? You got to really start off with that leadership portion of it, and you got to get the team engaged in it and buy into whatever it is the doctor or owner wants. Otherwise, all the systems, they don't matter. So they do and they don't.
So I'm in Ahwatukee, and you live in Chandler?
I live in Chandler, yeah.
Chandler? So
yeah.
In Chandler, how much does a bypass cost?
No idea.
So the average in Chandler is right at $100,000
for a bypass.
Okay. It's a CABG, CABG, a coronary artery bypass graft. They take the coronary clogged arteries, they cut them out, they go into leg vein and replumb it. And no, I should have you guess. I'll take another price.
Okay.
How much does it cost to get a colon cancer resection? You go in there, you got colon cancer, and they got to go in there and cut out a foot of your pipe and sew it back together.
I'm going to say it's less than the heart surgery maybe because it's not I don't know. Let's go 75.
Because an asshole's worth less than a heart.
I wasn't going to say that.
That's what you're saying.
Like,
what were you going to say?
I'll say 75.
Wow, it was 70. But the point I was making is that all these dentists out here, they'll go learn how to do ortho.
Right.
And in their medical dental building, in their zip code, an orthodontist charges $6,000, and then they'll just price it $4,500. And I'll say, well, what the orthodontist has 50% overhead. So you just lowered your fee $1,500. Then you're going to come back to me and say, well, why is my overhead high? Well, none of the patients go, wow, that was really low cost ortho. Every dentist listening to this podcast could call all the specialists and ask for what they charge for a pulpotomy, a chrome steel crown, what do you charge for ortho, call the oral surgeon, what do you call for an extraction, wisdom teeth, and set their fees tomorrow. And not one person in their zip code would know because all those fees are already clearing in their marketplace. So if they say, well, Howard, you don't understand, I'm in Clay City, Kansas. Well, so is that oral surgeon, endodontist, periodontist, pedodontist. They're all those prices are clearing in Clay City, Kansas right now. And you're not going to find anyone in Kansas who knows the price of anything in dentistry above a cleaning maybe, or, a cleaning. And they just won't do it. So it's kind of silly that they're and then when they go to their state board, are the lawyers going to say, well, I'm not going to hold you to the level of the endodontist because he was getting $1,500. You only got 1,000, so that's only 2/3. So that's why you only got 2/3 of the way towards the apex. And the root canal failed, but they didn't give you enough money to go all the way down. Oh, and they're not going to do that. The endodontist getting $1,500 is going to come in and grade your $1,000 root canal. The orthodontist getting $6,500 is going to come in and grade your $4,500 short-term ortho, whatever the heck you're doing. The specialists are always going to be sitting there as the judge, the jury, and the executioner. So why not charge their fees? Because the 9 specialties by the ADA, their overheads between 40 and 50. And then the 150,000 general, their overheads, north of 64%.
Well, you bring up lots of valuable points. One of the things, if I could tell all the dentists out there right now, and they're all going to not like this comment, Howard, most of them aren't. If you could really focus on something, focus on those people who don't have dental insurance. We're so insurance driven. It's so all to your point. When I go into practices, they're always telling me about their fees and the numbers. And last time they blah, 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 blah. But what about all those people when only 30% of the population has dental insurance? Why are we so driven by that? Why aren't we tapping more into all those people who don't have it so we can serve those people? So going back to price, quality, and service, not to beat a dead horse, but if you're about quality and service, why don't you really feed into all of those patients without dental insurance? Do you have dental insurance?
I don't.
Yeah, do your kids?
No.
Well, now, granted, you're in a different...
Either does my cat.
Your cat doesn't either.
My cat
She doesn't have care credit or anything. I mean, most people don't have dental insurance unless they're working for a big corporation, right? So I hear you speak on your podcast all the time. How do small dentists stay apart or stick out compared to these big corporations? Well, what are the big corporations really good at? They're marketing to dental insurance, right? Are they trying to capture those people that don't?
You know what I like the most about corporate dentistry in Phoenix, Arizona?
What's that?
It's the best place to steal talent. I mean, those chains,
They
some of those
learn a
chains
lot.
have 100, 200, 500 offices. I mean, now when I have an opening, I only want somebody that's been in a chain of at least 25 because they're so I mean, when you have one office, you can be so inefficient. But basically, this is what I think how management works in a small office. They with their PPOs, price is so low. With them try to do such high quality dentistry with all Ivoclar and 3M products and not knowing the cost, it doesn't matter because everyone $1,000 crown is half margin. Half of the dentists don't do $1,000 root canal, which is 80% margin. But if they just do 3 or 4 crowns a day, it covers up for all the inefficiencies and they make bank and they just go on forever and ever and ever. But if that office expanded to 2 or 3 or 4 locations, all those little problems that could be buried by just doing 4 crowns a day, those little Doberman pinchers had now turned into a T-Rex,
yes.
And you go bankrupt. The most the most highly percentage chance that a dental office will go bankrupt is between the 2 to 3 million mark, because you can cover so much shit under the rug at $500,000 a year. But between 2 and 3 million, you are so big, you're such a beast. These problems are insurmountable. So when you have a chain that gets to 5, 10, 20, 50, 500 locations, last team member I picked up came from a chain that has over 100 locations. Well, they're so highly educated in all the little details that, I mean, they're the best. And and they have their turnover too with patients and doctors. So they're I think the chains are best at educating dentists. So I'm going to go back to so you're known for so what do you monitor and measure? And then the three things I want you to talk about is what do you monitor and measure? Whenever he says, okay, morning huddle, what do? They just sit there and show up and bring donuts and and talk about last night's World Series victory by the Royals. And then the treatment tracker. So go more into let's start with the monitor and measure. What do you think you should monitor and measure, and why?
Yeah, so there's the biggest thing for me when I see practices are really successful, even to what you're speaking on, big corporate dentistry. What do they do well? Is they monitor things, they measure, and they make it go right. So I like saying that, monitor, measure, make things go right. So whatever that means. So when you're monitoring and you're measuring, the first thing that we want to talk about is morning huddle. So let's use the football analogy. I know we're coming off the heels of the game last night, and you're probably a huge Royals fan, right?
I went to UMKC Dental School, and it almost made me fall out of my chair last night when they said it was 30 years ago, because I don't feel like I'm that old, Evan, because I was in Kansas City Dental School when they won the last World Series.
Oh, really? Okay.
And I just cannot comprehend that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I remember walking in dental school and thinking, oh, there's no way I can do this for 4 years. Just 4 years seems so long.
Yes.
And now that was 30 years ago. So what's 30 years divided by 4? I mean, I've gone through dental school that many times. I mean, it's just crazy, but
yeah. So going back to the sports analogy, when we go into the morning huddle, what we always want to do is look at how did we do yesterday? I'm always wanting the office manager print out the morning huddle sheet in the morning, have it on her desktop or his, and write down something that worked really well today. Why? Because we always hear all the negatives. If we could sit there all day long and have a morning huddle about everything that didn't go well yesterday, or how the schedule looks today, or how it's looking for tomorrow, who wants to hear all that nonsense first thing in the morning too? We want to start on a positive note. What did we do right yesterday? Now, what didn't we do well, and that we could course correct immediately? And we don't need to go into the story about it. You know what I mean? Like, and then she came in at 8:02 and her appointment was at 8 and she didn't have her paper. No one cares about all that. Excuses are just well-planned lies. That's Sara Fossen.
I like that.
Thing.
Excuses are just well-planned lies.
They are, right? So no one wants to hear your reasons and your excuses.
I always say everyone has an asshole and an excuse.
Well, yes. So reasons and excuses are well-planned lies. So we want to have our morning huddle sheet and say, what did we do yesterday that, how many new patients did we see? How much did each doctor produce? How much did the hygienist produce? What was our closing ratio? No one ever knows our closing ratio. And everyone will tell me, I close 90, 100%. I'm like, great. Are you measuring that? Let me see the facts on it. If you deal with facts and you're not dealing with the emotion, it cuts all the drama out. Have you ever noticed that when you're just dealing with facts? You're like, oh, what are the facts? What are your numbers? So when we do that each morning, it can be short and quick. It doesn't have to be a long, lengthy thing. But we want to talk about that. How did we do yesterday? Where did we end up? What was our pre-appoint number on each hygienist? So I'm working with a practice right now in Casa Grande. They have 3 hygienists, and I want to know their pre-appoint number every single morning. Why? Why is that important? Well, we want to see, are people rescheduling for their next cleaning? Are they doing it in the back? Are the hygienists doing it? The hygienist is the number 1 patient educator on the team. Number 1 patient educator. They're number 2 most trusted. There's something very magical about your hygienist booking your next appointment, and your patient sitting in the chair knows that the hygienist did it. She wrote it in her handwriting on the appointment card. Or if you're still doing the old cards where you're having them do their own card and filling it out, whichever way you do it, doesn't really matter as long as you're having a system in place. But I want to go the next morning and say, what was the pre-appoint number? Why? Well, first of all, create some healthy competition amongst the hygienists, like who's getting 10 out of 10 or 8 out of 8, or who's the one that didn't schedule, and is that somebody we can call right now today, like they slipped through the cracks, and get them pre-appointed right now. The stat is, and you probably know better than I do for sure, Howard, is 70% of what a dentist does comes out of hygiene. If that number's true, 70%, that means our hygiene schedule needs to be just jam-packed, and we need to have a short notice list, because it's missed opportunity every time there's a hygiene appointment available or open, right? If it's open today, it's going to be open 6 months from today. So we want to know what that pre-appoint number is. So in the huddle, we're talking just briefly about yesterday. What were the facts? What were the numbers? What did we produce? What did we collect? What was our pre-appoint number? How many new patients did we see? What did we do well, for goodness sakes? Let's start with that. What did you guys high five? You know, you want to talk about sitting around a table and eating donuts. That's fine, but we're still going through the numbers. And then what is something that we maybe didn't do quite as well as we'd like to? We want to course correct it right here without the story of it. Okay, so that's first. Second of all, we want to look at where are we for today. And, you know, dentists get crazy. That's my experience. I'm not saying it's the truth. Anything I say, when they walk in and their schedule's not full, they're like, oh my God, my schedule's not full. I'm like, that's great news. That's like, whoa, opportunity everywhere. That means anyone that's in the hygiene schedule today, you're doing an exam on them. How great would it be to service that patient today when they have a tiny little filling that you might not want to shove into your schedule today, but now you have an opening. You don't need to tell them that. You get to look like a rock star for once. You get to go in there as a dentist, go, you know what? I need to get a filling on this upper right-hand side. Let's do it for you right now so you don't have to come back. Then they don't have to think about it again. They're not making a buying decision again. Who loves going to the dentist? No offense, all you dentists out there. I never hear patients or my friends, or I'm not at a dinner party, you know, and when I say I'm in dentistry, what's the first thing that people do? Well, they cover their mouth. They don't want me to see their teeth. You know, they're embarrassed, or they're like, how do you work in dentistry, blah, blah, blah. Well, we want to change that stereotype. How do we change? Is by warding things off. You know, in dentistry, the smaller something is, it's usually easier to take care of today, right? And it's less expensive. So let's, all you dentists out there, take something away today. If your schedule's not full, great, good news. Let's find things that we can do today and serve people today.
And do you, by the way, these people listening, do you mostly like to consult in Arizona, or do you travel, or?
I traveled. I was on the road for about 12 years. And so now I really love being in Arizona because I have a house in Ocotillo, and I love giving back to my state. I went to school at ASU. Nice job. Yes. And my mom did, both my brothers. So big ASU family, but absolutely I'll travel somewhere.
How do these dentists get in contact with you? Because I guarantee you, Sara crushes it with your staff.
Oh.
So how do they go to SaraFossen.com?
Yep. It's just my name.
Sara, SaraFossen.
Uh-huh.
Now, I know from your young, sprightly age that you were named after Sara in the Hall & Oates song. Or the Jefferson Starship. Every Sara I know is named after their mom and dad loved Hall & Oates, Sara, or Jefferson Starship.
Well, I'm a little bit older, but yes.
Were you named after one of those?
No, I wasn't. My mom and dad wanted me named, my middle name is Jolie, Jolie. It's French. It means the word pretty. And my mom's a French teacher. She teaches in the high school in Casa Grande. And she did not.
Your middle name's what?
Jolie. And that's the
Jolie is French for
pretty.
Pretty. Wow.
It's similar, like in Spanish it'd be bonita.
And Howard is Latin for ass. I did not know that.
You're the only boy, right, in your family.
So how do they contact you? What's your email address?
My email address is my name. So it's Sara, Sara, at sarafossen.com. But my dad didn't want my first name to be that because he's like, everyone will call you Julie, Jolie. And so they compromised with Sara. It was a biblical name. And dropped the H because my dad said no one pronounces it. So he dropped it. So, but I know the two songs you're speaking of.
So I'm going to go back to the
huddle.
The huddle. After we leave the huddle, we all, not me, the dentist don't. All the non-dentists wire up on two-way radio, walkie-talkies.
Excellent.
And now I notice when I go to any organization that's doing $1 million a year. I mean, you go up to, you check in at a restaurant, they're wearing them. I mean, and back when, 20 years ago, when you took your kids to Disneyland, you could always see 2 or 3 Disney employees in a full sprint across the park.
Yeah.
Now everybody's just calmly like, yeah, we got a lost kid, blah, blah. And you go in and you ask a special request at the maitre d' at a restaurant. Everyone, I mean, they're 16 years old and they're like, yeah. Everyone using Lifetime Fitness. Every workout trainer in that place is on one. My dental office, I couldn't live without it. But when I'm lecturing to a group, there's not even one office out of 100 on two-way radios. And then you go in their office and, there's Sarah walking around her whole life looking for a lost chart. There's a lady, can I squeeze in? Well, let me put you on hold. And they go back and they're standing there waiting for the assistant to look. I mean, so what are your thoughts about two-way radios?
I love them.
Why did they not take off in dentistry?
I think that the dentists are fearful. This is just, again, not the truth. It's just my my perspective of, they think that they're taking away from their patient when they're talking into their collar or into the earbud. And really, it's not. It's so effective. I was working with a practice up in Dewey, Arizona. One dentist, he had two hygienists, and he ran out of 3 rooms himself. So he had 3 operatories at all times, 2 hygienists. And those radios were a lifesaver. I remember implementing that with them, and as well as black scrubs. I'm a huge fan of black scrubs. I think it's classy. Everyone matches. They should have their name embroidered on there. They should have your logo on there. So when they're going out to lunch, it's marketing and branding for you. But just going back to what you said about even being in a really nice restaurant, what do they always wear? Solid black. You know who's in the back. I hate scrubs in the front. I think it's tacky. I think people up front who are dealing with money need to dress appropriately. We don't go to the bank and try to deposit our check or get something corrected and somebody that's wearing scrubs. You want them to be a professional and look in a professional appearance. But I think the headsets, they just get scared. They're afraid that they're taking away their time. That's just my opinion. I don't know that that's a fact. But when we did that in Dewey, it was so effective. You saw the level of stress so much go money down.
Because you'll have 2 receptionists on the phone, and I'm talking to Mark, and you're talking to Amy, and Mark calls me up to cancel, and I don't have time to put him on hold and go tell the whole damn office canceled. So I'll just go there and push PTT, push to talk. Howard's 10 o'clock just canceled. And then my other receptionist has just heard that in her ear, and she's talking to a lady with an emergency, and she just hears that for 1 second. Can you come down right now? Yeah. And then all the hygienists are hearing that saying, well, Sarah, do you want to stay and do your filling? And then one of the hygienists thinking, well, I'm doing a quad and replaying curettage. Do you want to stay for another quad? And then said, well, here, take my cleaning. I'll just take.
So efficient.
It's like I don't know how we could do our break-even point without that. I don't know how we would do that. What would be alternative? To write a Post-it note, and go stick one in 8 operatories at Howard's 10 o'clock? I don't get it.
So it's either the fear of just looking too technical, or taken away from the patient, or the other thing I always hear dentists say is they don't want to hear all the jabber that goes on it.
Well, so then that's just, you just tell them not to jabber.
Yeah,
it's
you
not
have
for
to
jokes. It's not for it's kind of like LinkedIn versus Facebook. Facebook, you can put a picture of I'm eating a tuna sandwich. LinkedIn's it's just
unacceptable.
I want to ask you another thing, because I'm 53. Bill Blatchford, I think, is 73. Is that right? And he's kind of like the grandfather of practice management and everything. And so when I got out of school, his big message out there that a lot of the old guys like my age believes that you want to do $1 with a dentistry, you're going to diagnose 3. And so then there's these other more new age consultants who are saying, well, if you present it right, you can have like a 90% treatment plan acceptance. Now, as far as what are the facts, when we look at the facts for the U.S. industry, the dentist close rate for the country is 38%. So if they diagnose 100 cavities, they drill, fill, and bill 38. So the fact that they talk about all this clinical dentistry bullshit when they only do 1 out of 3 cavities, they should only talk about why you're not doing the other 2 out of 3 cavities. Well, we're wrong in your treatment plan, your presentation, your financing. Imagine if the firemen only put out 1 in 3 fires. Imagine if the police department only caught 1 in 3 bad guys. But back to this deal. This is something that really is hard for me to grasp. if you want to do $1 million practice, should you just start diagnosing 3 million a year? And if you throw 3 million of diagnosed treatment against the wall, 1 million of it's going to fall down the chair? Or do you just diagnose 1 million and try to get the 1 million done?
Well, the rule of thumb that I always go by is that you're going to close about 66%. So a third are always going to say yes. So there's a third of the population that when you share with them that they have active decay in their mouth and they need to have it filled, drilled, they're going to say yes to you. They're your patient that's been coming to you forever or whatever. We could create scenarios all day long, but a third are always going to say yes. A third are always going to say no. They say no everywhere in their life. Let them go. They're just going to say no to you. They're not going to believe it. I just had my teeth cleaned a couple weeks ago. The hygienist is like, oh, you really should get a skin graft on this tooth number 14. I'm like, no, the solution sounds worse than the problem. It sounds disgusting. I'm never going to have skin taken off the roof of my mouth. And I'm in dentistry, but it sounds awful. You have to sell me on what the consequence is if I don't do it, right?
Yeah.
So... and I'm coming back to that point. So a third will say yes, a third will say no. And then it's our job to get the other third over the fence. We're only going to close 66% of all the patients we see, right? So where you really want to go to work, and where, in my opinion, is what I've seen that dentists are really good at telling you what the problem is and really good at the solution. But the solution lots of times sounds worse than the problem. Like when you say to me, I need a root canal, I'm like, that doesn't sound fun. That sounds worse than the toothache I have, right? Or root planing and scaling. I love when hygienists say that. I'm like, no, stop saying that to patients. First of all, that's our terminology in our school, in our backyard, right? Not theirs. The solution sounds worse than problem. What we have to get really good at if we want to close 66% is at what the consequence is if we don't take any action. So here's the problem, patient. Here's the consequence if you don't take any action, and here's the solution to the problem. And then that's going to be tied with whatever personally motivates them to go to the dentist in the first place, right? Lots of people get their teeth cleaned every single 6 months because their mama's mama told them to get their teeth cleaned, or because the ADA says you can have your teeth cleaned, or they have dental insurance that says you can have your teeth cleaned every 6 months. So they come, and we want to get really good at having them come on a regular basis so we can close that 66%. That's
well,
it's
kind of interesting because the insurance companies confirm that it's a 38% close rate. So what Bill Blatchford's saying, the 38% is a third. So he's saying, yeah, you close a third. So if you want $1 million, you're going to diagnose 3 million. So he's there. But what you're saying is a third will say no to anybody. A third will say yes to everything. But if you work on that third in the middle, you can swing them over from an angle. And I like that model because as a dentist, I think a fireman should put out all the fires. I think a police department needs to catch all the bad guys. And I would rather send my 4 boys to a dentist who had a 2/3 close rate. And I don't care what materials he used. I don't care if it's amalgam or IRM and butter versus the dentist who's, a Pankey grad and married John Coyce and has 9-point occlusion. Well, who cares? Because you don't do anything 2 out of 3 times. 2 out of 3 times you're not doing anything. So then my question is, I know 2 assistants, and they're busy and they're shy and they're married and they got kids, but basically they work for dentists that we know. Okay. And they hired them. The dental office did $500,000 a year. Okay. They hired them, and as a dental assistant, they said, well, let me just be your treatment plan presenter. They went to $1.5 million, and after 5 years, asked for a raise from, they were getting 14, and went in there one day and said, I want 21 an hour. I've raised your son. And they said no, and gave her like 15, so she quit and went to another office in Glendale, who we both know. She said, I'll take you. She went from $500,000 to $1.5 million, and the last office that was doing $1.5 million went back down to $500,000. And I know another amazing dental assistant who's done this 3 times in Indiana. 3 times she's taken office from $500,000 to $1.5 million. Can't get a raise. Leaves. Yeah. That one goes back from $1.5 million to $500,000. She's done this 3 times. Okay. My question is, my question is a 2-part question. You're a consultant, and you've seen so many offices for so many years. Do you think a dentist who can't run his office should just delegate that to an office manager? And if you have a 1/3 close rate where you tell 3 people they each have a cavity and 2 walk out the door, should you just say, look, I'm a trained scientist. I know algebra and geometry. I'm just going to get a treatment plan presenter and just quit doing it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what I've done for 28 years.
You have to.
People always say, "How do you do it? How do you do it?" You know what my answer is? They always say, "How do you have a dental office, a magazine, a what blah?" And they always say, "Well, how do you do it?" You know how I do it? I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Ray Kroc is dead, and 40,000 McDonald's don't need him. Sam Walton is dead, and there's not one Walmart today saying, "Where's Sam Walton?"
Exactly.
I mean, nobody in my company has ever needed me once in 28 years because I got the best people, got the frick out of their way.
Yes.
And Jan's been presenting all my treatment for 28 years.
Yeah.
And I don't even like any of her explanations. I don't even get them.
Yeah.
She still tells people that a root canal is when he blows the infection out.
Oh,
And I'm like,
does it work?
I'm like,
When she's
Jan,
closing?
we don't even use the air water syringe. I don't even. So that's what I believe. But these people listen to me.
I believe
100%.
Some of the best treatment plan coordinators I've ever seen are people who don't have dental background. Surprisingly enough, I was working in practice in Stephenville, Texas, many, many years ago, and awesome treatment coordinator. She came from the bank. It's just presenting what the facts are. Here's what you need to have done. Here's what's going to happen if you don't have it done. And here's the solution. They go in and they remove the decay. So in the case of the root canal,
You blow the infection out.
well, if you're Jan, you say blow. If Sarah's teaching them, I'm training them, just remove it. Cleanings. It's ridiculous. Why are we talking to people about getting root planing, scaling? Sounds like you're going to wood shop or you're going to get cut up and sawed up or whatever, right? They don't know what that means. There's 3 levels of cleaning. One is the person who comes every 6 months and doesn't have a problem. There's level 2 when you've skipped a few years, and level 3 is like, you skipped more than a few years, but the good news is we're going to get you back on track and you're never going to have this done again if you come back every 4 months from here on out, right? Even insurance knows that. They pay for root planing and scaling.
That's gold. That was worth the whole podcast.
Okay, good. Don't talk to patients about the solutions that we know as dental terminology because they don't understand it. Most of them really don't want to know. You're going to have those types of patients, that 1/3 that always say yes and they're an A personality and want to know exactly what it is. And then you're going to have people like me who've been in dentistry forever. And when you start telling me about taking skin off the roof of my mouth and I'm just like, gross, it sounds painful. I don't know. Maybe there'll be a new cure for implants or really simple. I don't know, right? So you just have to speak to your listening. And I think sometimes we get caught up, meaning doctors, and I'm going to say that, dentists, you guys are very smart people and it's technical for you. So stay out of the treatment planning. Stay out of prices. When they ask you, what's the price of something?
The other reason I don't get it is sometimes when Jan starts presenting the treatment,
yes,
and Dawn comes in and starts presenting the money, sometimes they're in there for an hour.
Yeah.
And I go into the next room and do a complete molar root canal, and I come out and they're still talking.
Yeah.
I mean, what dentist on earth has time to sit in there with Mrs. Jones? And then sometimes we had one last Monday. You can't make this shit up.
Tell me.
2 hours.
For treatment planning.
Jan and Dawn were 2 hours, and she decided she didn't want to have any of it done and left. I mean, we didn't even schedule a nickel's worth of shit. They were in there for 2 hours answering every question, going over every, and the dentist wants to do that himself. Are you kidding me?
No, it's not a good use of your time. It's not a good use of your hands, your drill, all of that stuff that you need to be working on. Let your team take care of you. Number one philosophy, and you're great at that. Let everyone else that's good at it. The assistant that you're talking about, that's so great. I'd hire her in a heartbeat anywhere, right? Because they're the number one trusted person on the team. How many times?
You said the hygienist was number 2.
The dental assistant.
You said the hygienist number 2.
Yes.
I just assumed the dentist was number 1.
No.
Was that a little self-serving, egotistic?
Yeah,
being a dentist.
bit.
But it was the assistant's number 1.
The dental assistant is the number 1 most trusted person on the team.
Really? I believe it.
If you ask a dental assistant, all you assistants out there, you dentists listening, go ask your dental assistant, how many times a day when I walk out of the room as the dentist, he or she, does the patient turn to the dental assistant and say, do I really need this root canal? Do I really need this extraction? Do I really need fill in the blank?
What percent of the time do you think it is?
I don't want to guess. I don't know, but I think it's higher than we think.
What blows my mind is I'll do a root canal on someone and their eye will swell shut and there'll be blood licking out of their ear and their left leg is numb and they'll call the office and tell them all this and they'll say, well, is Jan there? They're like, well, do you want to talk to the doctor? No. I want to talk to Jan. It's
Yeah, 'cause she makes
really?
it
Your
feel
left
good.
leg is numb. Are you sure you don't want to talk to Howard? Like, nope, I'll talk to Jan. I mean, so.
Well, what's the old saying? You're going to forget 90% of what I say, but you're going to remember 10% of how I made you feel. That's why even that lady that you're talking about that was in your practice last week that spent 2 hours talking with the gals in your office, she's still going to remember how they made her feel. Even if she said no to her treatment, she might come back around. They say a patient has to hear it 5 times. So for her, that patient, it might be 10, right? Who knows? At some point, she'll say yes to something, maybe, or she'll say no, and you just got to let it go.
I want to go back to this bank thing. My best employees, receptionists and office managers, always were stolen from Chase Bank in my parking lot, which is what you said,
Yes.
and bookkeepers. You go to Arizona, and this is what I believe. If someone comes in and applies to work at the front desk the last 20 years, and they say, well, I got 5-10 years experience across the street. And I'll say, well, what software was he using? Dentrix? Okay, I'm just wondering, does Dentrix run 5 reports, 10 reports, 20 reports, 40 reports? How many reports does it do? I don't know. He never really took us to training, and it's always. And I'm like, you're a monkey, and you sat. I mean, could you imagine if someone said, I'm on Facebook 8 hours a day, 5 days a week for 10 years, and I don't know how to poke someone?
Yeah.
You think you're not right in the head.
You're not paying
And when you
attention.
hire a bookkeeper or someone from a bank, and you give them no training, and you put them on SoftDent, Dentrix, EagleSoft, or whatever. In like 1 week, they come back and they've gone through and they've checked every function on the website. They know how. They just have a different mind. And a dentist will hire a receptionist who has 10 years experience on Dentrix, who can't even tell you almost anything about the Dentrix software that she's been using for a decade. And then I'll just say to her, show me how you balance your own damn personal checkbook. And she'll say, well, I don't ever reconcile my bank statements and then he wants to pay her like 15, 16, 17 bucks an hour. Then the bookkeeper chicks come in asking for 12. They don't need any training, and they are from Chase Bank. I mean, it's a totally different breed of a mind. I mean, some people are born to sing and dance and music, and some people just know the details. And detail-oriented people come from bookkeeping and banking.
Right. You want that. So when you're out hiring people, it's a question I get asked all the time, especially as a consultant. Will you help us hire somebody? Or if they need to fire somebody, they want to know that I'm going to help with the replacement. If they have dental experience, great, but what is their mindset on money? That's my biggest question. When you're a treatment plan coordinator, I need to know that you're not concerned about spending 25 cents on something or $25 or $2,500. If you have that concern, it's going to leak through to your patients. So that's why those people with those kind of backgrounds usually have no personal attachment to it, especially if they come from a bank. They see all kinds of walks of life and types of money, right? So those sometimes are your best treatment coordinators. Doesn't mean that somebody that has tons of experience can't, but I see the same thing with the software. They don't ever learn it, and then they want to blame it on the doctor for not getting training. Well, all right, well, did you ask for it? Did you ask for the training? Did you ask them to pay? Dentrix right now has tons of webinars on it. It's absolutely ridiculous. You're just not a self-starter at all if you're not learning every minute detail of Dentrix. You can go in there. If I was going to train somebody, whether they're in the front or the back, it would be mandatory that they take those webinars and they have to pass.
And these are webinars on Dentrix own website.
They're free. They go along with the program. So I waited tables a few years ago. I went to work for one of my friends, owns a bar and restaurant downtown Chandler. And I said, let me come work for you because, it's brand new from scratch. I go, I know if I'm out on the floor, I will bring customers in and they'll stay. I just know that because I have the confidence that I will serve them well. It's not about price. It was about customer service and quality, right? And he's like, you want to do that? Throw me in for 6 months. I'll work every Saturday and Sunday. To wait tables, I had to take a test and pass it and have a card on hand, to even wait on tables. And I'm like, and here we are letting dental assistants clean things and be subjected to hepatitis and all the things. I mean, we could go on a tangent, right? But why don't we do the same thing for our team? Going back to that 70% of Fortune 500 companies having mentorships, coaching programs, that's an important part, dentists out there. Get your team trained. The software is your bicycle. It's like riding a bicycle with one flat tire. If they don't know all the ins and outs of it, you're still going to get somewhere on the bicycle without a handlebars or a seat or one flat tire, but you're not going to get there as efficiently. Your software, your EMR, practice management software, whatever you call it, is your tool for your efficiencies every single day.
And what's so sucky is you have to master it because they're so shitty to begin with. I mean, Dentrix and EagleSoft and SoftDent are so horrible that the last thing you can do is just not even use their horribleness.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're dealing with that shitty of a software that has no accounting, no cost, you can't enter your fee schedule, it can't generate payroll, statement of income. I mean, when basically you'd been better served buying a Subway franchise or a Long John Silver's than buying Dentrix and becoming a dentist. But that's a whole nother issue that I got to quit ranting about. But I want to end with this.
Yeah.
Because we're in overtime with you. But
whoops.
I want you to focus on this. Here's, I do these podcasts for free. I put them out there for free because in my heart, I want to help these dentists.
Me too.
They're stressed. I want them to be happy and healthy. And I believe that a consultant, just like an Olympic coach, first they got to understand this talking monkey. What makes this crazy person click?
Yeah. And
you got to try to unwind and reframe. Like you're not firing Linda. Linda's miserable. She must hate her job. Look at her. She's basic. If she was a monkey, she'd be throwing bananas and fecal matter at you. You're going to free her to go find something she likes to do. Yeah. So you have to crawl in their head and reframe all their problems. This data exists, but it's not a fire. It's a freedom. You got to reframe everything. But my deal is all the successful dentists like myself on up, and I can think of 1,000 dentists that have better offices than me. They've been on a diet of consultants for 30 years. They've all had a dozen. I've had a dozen. And then everybody who's just about ready to hang themselves on a ceiling fan and quit and burn out and start eating Vicodin and nitrous, they won't ever call for help. So everybody that needs you in this town, I mean, come on, we've been here forever. I mean, we have 1 to 3 suicides a year right in the valley here. 1 to 3 every year that I've been here. So everybody that desperately needs you is never going to call. And everybody that hires you is just wants to be even better. So I want you to tell the dentist listening to, they're driving to work, tell them, who is your perfect client? What do you like to go on and help? Try to connect with some dentists. They're all alone, each listening. Try to connect with that person on this podcast and say, hey, here's the red flags. If you have this scenario, I'm your chief.
Yeah, if you're laying awake at night having the same conversation over and over, or you know how you started this podcast, Howard, with talking about gossip. If you're going to your best friend or your spouse and you're having the same constant complaint over and over and over, but you're not getting a different result, I'm the person to come in and help you. If you're hovering around $1 million and you want to go to 1.5, or you're at 1.5 and you want to go to 2 million, you're already successful. I want all those dentists out there to know they're successful. They really are, whatever they measure themselves by. If they want to go to the next level, whatever that might be for them, whether they want to start weaning out of the practice, or they just want to be more efficient, or they want to work less, anyone who's coachable is the ideal client for me. Anyone who's looking for help and says, I know that I'm really good at being a dentist, and I might not know what else to do when my head's down. I need the people around me to protect my back when my head's down, when I'm drilling, filling, and billing. That's the perfect ideal client for me, is somebody who has the want, need, and desire. I can help you. I know I can, because I'm passionate about dentistry. I sucked my thumb. I had huge buck teeth. Thank God for Dr. Johnson in small town Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, the orthodontist who put braces on me. Because if I hadn't had that and I didn't have parents that had the money and the know-how, I couldn't sit here and do a podcast in front of you with big buck teeth. I couldn't have been, all over the world in dental practices. I understand the value of a smile. I understand what it does for people. I want to make a difference, and how I can make a difference in this world is by dentists who will allow me to come in and make a difference with their business.
And we both agree that people is probably 80% of it. I mean, it has to be 100% if Sam Walton is dead and all the Walmarts don't need him. Ray Kroc's dead, no McDonald's needs him. But back to that people issue, when you're talking to this dentist on the phone and she's telling you about everything right and wrong with all these employees, when you go in there, how often is she spot on with all the other relationships in her office? Or how often is her favorite girl, Joe Friday, that she couldn't live without, usually a nightmare? I mean, when they're telling you on the phone, here's my staff problems and here's the strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. How right are they? How often do you come in there and say, well, that girl that you think you just can't live without is the best thing in the world? Yeah, we need to take her to a vet and put her down. And this girl over here that you think you want to fire, she's actually the heart, So I'm trying to have a personal conversation because I don't know if they see their red flags to pick up the phone. So
yeah,
I'm trying to talk into this dentist's mind that I'm just trying to get an outside deal. How right are they on their relationships and evaluating the relationships of their team?
It's really 50-50. Either they're spot on or they're so dead wrong because they really don't know what's happening. And it's not, they're not bad people. It's just that they're working on patients, doing what they went to school and spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to do. And they don't see the other side of it because I'm their eyes and ears. I'm on their team. I'm on their side. And it's not me against their team. I'm really looking to see, do we have the right people in the right place doing the right thing? And if not, we have to fire them fast and start fresh, because one bad apple on the whole team can really bring it down. Most doctors don't like that. They don't like change. They're no different than people. People don't like change, right? I don't know what my stat would be. I'd say it's about right in the middle. They'll either know right dead on who's strong or weak, or they absolutely have no idea. They're clueless, and don't hear it like there's something wrong with them. They just don't really understand the dynamics of what's happening in the front of their building.
So your email is sarah@sarafossen.com.
That is correct.
Sarah, you've been my idol and role model for so many years. And thank you for all that you do for dentistry, and thank you for all that you've done for me.
Thank you. Thanks for having me today. I appreciate it. It's
All
been
right.
awesome.